you ruled the world, what kind of a place would it be? Maybe you're not a very organised person, and in your world everything would be done at the last minute, which would be infuriating for organised people. Maybe you'd want a world full of sport, or maybe you'd want to ban it. Some people would pursue adventure and thrills. Others like nothing better than curling up with a good book. What the person sitting next to you wants is probably quite different from you. When we talk about our personal likes and dislikes, there probably isn't a world we all want. But if we think about it seriously, there are some big common themes to our hopes and dreams. Isn't the world we all want a world with no sickness, no sorrow, no death? Isn't it a world where there's no drought or devastation? The world we all want is a world where everyone has plenty of food and water, where we can all enjoy ourselves and reach our full potential. It's a world where we don't grow frail, where we don't have to cope with failing memories and bodies, where we never lose those we love, where we're never hurt by others, nor hurt others ourselves. The last 2 chapters of the Bible tell us that there is such a world. It paints an attractive and compelling picture. Don't you find yourself longing for this new world? I do. Most of the time I know very well that this world isn't that world. This world isn't the world we all want. And it's in those moments of realization that I long all the more for this new world. In fact, the more intense the pain, the more desperate the longing for a world with no pain. As the Bible describes this world we all want, it's claiming that this world is the world God promises us. In this session, we'll see 2 surprising things about the world we all want, and this is the first: God promises it. At the very end of the Bible, God says, "I am making everything new." This new world isn't going to come about by a violent revolution. It's not going to be created by economic systems. Neither philosophers nor politicians are going to make it happen. Capitalism, socialism, fascism, communism, any other ism can't deliver this world. Self-help groups and psychotherapy can't bring it into existence. Nor can acts of terrorism or UN resolutions. What the Bible claims is that only God can bring this new world into existence. It also says God has promised to do precisely that. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to make sure someone either understood what you were saying or really believed it? Perhaps you prefaced your comments with the words, "You really need to listen to this." Or maybe you said, "Honestly, no, really." Well, this is exactly what the speaker in this part of the Bible does. He makes a point of emphasizing the reliability of this promise by repeating the phrase, "These words are faithful and true." At the end of descriptions of something so beautiful, breathtaking, which satisfies our deepest longings, he wants to make sure we don't dismiss them as fantasy. These words are faithful and true. It's like he's saying, listen up. You better believe this. Because let's be honest, it does sound too good to be true. Whatever God claims, surely any reasonable person realizes it's a pipe dream. Maybe we can get lost in our dreams as we fly off with Peter Pan to Never Never Land. But sooner or later we have to face reality again and come down to earth, often with a bump. It could be something as ordinary as seeing dirt and litter on the streets, or feeling a hint of fear as we walk down a dimly lit road, or as we feel the pain of a headache, or hear tragic news from a friend, or experience the loss of someone we love. Then we realize that as good as all this sounds, it's not going to happen. But before we dismiss such a dream, let's turn to somewhere else in the Bible. For the second surprising thing we see in this session is this: there was a time in history where the world we all want actually existed. The Gospel of Mark in the Bible is not talking about something that may happen in the future. It's describing something that's already happened. It's talking about historical events. It was written by a man who knew the people who'd seen these events, or had probably seen some of them himself. Mark tells us about a man called Jesus who lived in Israel about 2,000 years ago. He was an amazing individual who had an amazing impact on history. In Mark chapter 5, we see Jesus as a miracle worker. He healed a woman with a serious health problem. She also had a serious social problem. In her world, her condition meant she would have been an outcast. So she'd spent all her money on doctors and there was no hope of cure until Jesus walked by. She was convinced that if she could just touch his clothes, she would be made completely well. And that's what happened. Mark goes on to tell us of a young girl who's raised from the dead. Everyone was convinced they'd lost her, but Jesus simply speaks to her and she comes back to life. At the end of the Bible, we read about a world with no more death or mourning or crying or pain. And here it is. The young girl is brought back from death. The mourning and crying stop. In Mark's account of Jesus, we discover that Jesus calmed a storm that threatened people's lives, released people from the power of evil spirits, healed people who were sick, provided food for the hungry, even raised people from the dead. Isn't that remarkable? If what Mark is saying is true, then Jesus has the power to create the world we all want. Of course, it was only a glimpse of that world. Even as Jesus was giving life back to the girl, thousands of other people in the world were dying. Even as the woman in the crowd was healed, countless others were still suffering. So the world we all want did not exist fully, but it was the real thing. It's as though a curtain was pulled back and we were allowed to get a glimpse of that world. Imagine tasting food as it's being prepared by a gifted chef. Or imagine sneaking into the kitchen and dipping a spoon into whatever is cooking. That sneak preview tantalizes your taste buds. As you wait for the meal, you find your mouth watering as you anticipate the full meal. That's what Jesus was doing. It was a foretaste, a hint, a promise of the world we all want. As we read about it, we may find ourselves thinking, that's what I want, a world like that. The promises God makes in Revelation don't seem quite so unbelievable if the events described by Mark actually happened. The world we all want isn't a fantasy or merely a dream. God has not only promised it as a future event, He's also given us a glimpse of it in history. The world we all want can be the world we all live in. The Bible tells us that it all depends on Jesus, on what He did and on what we do with Him. In our next session, we'll explore the world Jesus gave us a glimpse of in more detail. We'll see how His world is the world we all want, but we'll also see how, for all its promise, there was an unpleasant surprise waiting.